Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of week again, everybody's favorite segment on YouTube, the iHeartSports Power Rankings. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of movement in certain areas, but some teams are starting to make their name known, at least in the bottom rows. In the top rows, some teams are starting to walk away, pretty much securing their playoff spots, and the middling teams, there's a couple middling teams that just pretty much gave up and don't want to make the playoffs, but we'll get to that. Before we do, just one announcement off the top. We are having a channel fantasy football league. The draft is in 1 week. We are still looking for a couple of teams. If that is an interest to you and you are a subscriber, please join the Discord. It is down below, and send me a message or just make a mention in the general chat and we'll get you involved. I think we have 3 spots. It's free, but the winner, I do give a jersey of their choice too, so there is a little bit of incentive. Plus, I'm the reigning champ, so if you want a shot at me, you got to come get it. Let's jump into it. Number 30, sticking at the bottom for I don't even know how long now. Washington Nationals 1-1 against Seattle, 1-2 against Cincinnati. Now, I think I almost gave them a 29 spot. I'm like always looking for a reason to move someone up if I can. Definitely when you've been sitting in the bottom for so long. But they just didn't win a series, and I couldn't do it, even though number 29 is pretty much struggling just as bad. Pittsburgh Pirates 0-3 against Atlanta, 1-2 against Philly. So, they had a tough week. Pirates have been on the downfall since they were up here for a little while. I had a heart to put them in last, but if Washington would have taken the series from the Reds, I probably would have made the switch, but they didn't. So, Nationals fans and Pirates fans, you guys are the weakest links. Number 28, we got the Kansas City Royals, 1-1 against Arizona, 1-2 against San Diego. I don't have a lot to say about the Royals. It's just going to be clear-cut, seeing their young players make progress in the next month or two. They're out of it, right? Number 27, Cincinnati Reds, 0-4 against the Phillies, and then they did beat Washington 2-1. So the Reds make quite a big fall in the power rankings. I think I had them 24 last week. It's just starting to realize that after the trade deadline, they give away a lot of their talent. They don't really have much left, and that's no surprise. Pretty much another team waiting until next year, right? Number 26, we got the Oakland A's, moving up a couple of spots here. They went 1-2 against Miami. They are technically still playing the Yankees. They do have a lead. I expect them to split this series 2-2. If that changes again, it's not going to change the standings. The A's they've been one of those teams that, mind you, they've been in the bottom row all season, but they're playing tough, and they're starting to look like a 500, maybe a little bit less than 500 ball club. I put them up against any of these 4 teams, and I'm going to give them to be the favorite. Number 25, Detroit Tigers, 1-2 against San Fran, 2-1 against Texas, so just 500 week against some average teams. Pretty much makes them average, but I think I moved them up a spot. Pretty much at the fault of Cincinnati falling. I don't have anything else really to say about the Tigers. Another team falling out. 24, moving up into this row, we got the Angels. They went 0-4 against Tampa. So you gotta admit, I was very excited to see them come into Toronto, but then they smashed the Jays 3-0. So I guess you got to give them a little bit of credit, like their offense and Trout. He's back in the swing of things. Ohtani was looking good, definitely on the mound. So I think against all these teams, they are a stronger team. They do have those all-stars scattered throughout their lineup. But as we know this season, they just weren't able to put anything together, really. Number 23, we got Colorado Rockies, 1-2 against Texas, 1-3 against the Mets. Just not a great week. Honestly, you could probably put the Angels up. I know these 2 teams played somewhat recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago, but off the top of my head, I couldn't remember who won. Could have looked it up, I guess, but it really doesn't matter if you're 23 or 24. Not really. And the Rockies are pretty much falling slowly but surely down the ladder to be the worst team in their division. It used to be Arizona and them right beside each other, but you're going to see soon that is starting to spread. 22, we got the Miami Marlins, 2-1 against Texas, 1-2 against the Dodgers. They do have one more game against the Dodgers, but the only game they won against the Dodgers was Alcantara pitching out of his mind. What can you say? You got to give a little credit for the Miami Marlins having Alcantara. Does have that ace in the hole, probably top to win the Cy Young at this point. But other than that, you need some support around this guy. Weakest in the division again. It's a tough division. Oh no, not the weakest. Forgot about the Nationals. But long story short, they're in a tough spot because they got 3 teams ahead of them that they're well behind. So they got to figure something out. Number 21, we got Texas Rangers 2-1 against Colorado. They went 1-2 against Detroit, but I have to admit their offense this week was just crazy. I think out of all the teams on the board, I think they had the most runs. It was quite up there, definitely in their series against Detroit. Lots of runs being scored. So obviously pitching is going to be a concern for them going forward. Hopefully they got some good arms coming on up. But for me, I don't know too much of the farm team, but their offense is something that they got to be excited for. And that was what they really focused on in this past offseason. So I expect Texas to kind of bring some more money and address this pitching issue in the offseason. Right now, number 21, not too bad, but we know they're out of it, right? Number 20, we got the Chicago Cubs, 2-3 against St. Louis, 1-2 against Milwaukee. So they played the 2 division leaders this week, and they had a chance, I guess you could say, to say, okay, they're going to make some steps forward. They'd been one of the teams around 500, and I had said last week they'd pretty much cemented in 19th, but they just didn't have it. They got really beat up by the Cardinals. I think they were pretty lucky to take 2 of those games. They did split the 1 doubleheader, playing 5 games, going 3-2. And then Milwaukee, they just got 1, so it's a long way to go. The Cubs are in this weird spot where they're not like awful and they're not good, and it's just this weird mojo thing they got going on. No one's really standing out as taking this team on their back, so that is something that's concerned for me, and that's what makes the difference between them and number 19, Arizona Diamondbacks. They went 1-1 against Kansas City, and then they swept the White Sox. So that was a big series, and I got to be pretty pumped about that. I do like Arizona, and they do have some solid pitching, like Zach Gallen just being pretty good under the radar. Of course, you're going to become somewhat under the radar when you're on these 2 teams, and everyone's talking about Alcantara, but Gallen's having a monster season on himself. Diamondbacks have really solidified themselves as better than the Rockies. Like for the longest time this year, I've been pretty much saying these 2 teams were interchangeable. And they played a bunch. Arizona came out on top, and now Arizona's just picking up some momentum. They're beating some of these middle teams. They're sweeping the White Sox. And they're getting much, much closer to another division rival. Number 18, we got San Francisco Giants. I think they're 2-8 in their last 10. 2-1 against Detroit. So you started to think like they're not too far out of a playoff spot. They went 2-1 against Detroit. Kind of wanted to see a sweep there, but then over the weekend they got swept. Just not going good for them in that way. Minnesota comes in there, a team that, well, on the American League is in the same row as them. And if you're going to make a playoffs, you got to beat these teams. You got to win the series at the very least. And 2-8 in the last 10 is just not going to cut it for the Giants. And they have Diamondbacks on their heels in terms of skill, in my opinion. I don't know what the difference is in games back at this point, but I think Giants are running out of runway for sure. And number 17, this same team, 0-3 against Toronto. Almost saw their season come to an end. They went to the weekend playing Tampa Bay. They won the first 2, and then Tampa came and won the one today. So Boston's still hanging around, of course. A lot of teams to hop over. A lot of games back, and honestly, with their pitching and Chris Sale gone for the season, all this, you don't really think this is pretty much, to me, where the cutoff starts to be for teams that are going to make the playoffs. Number 16 is probably a long stretch now. At this point, we got the Chicago White Sox, 1-2 against Baltimore, 0-3 against Arizona. So just an atrocious week for a team that was technically still in this, and still is. Like, don't get me wrong, they're still in this Central American League division race. But it's starting to look bad for them. Definitely in a week where they're losing all the games to Arizona, a team that they should at least win a series against if they're going to be a playoff team, and then they lose to a team ahead of them that they're chasing in the wildcard race. Luckily, they stole 1 off Baltimore, but they're starting to be here. I'm starting to think like this is starting to be the cutoff for the playoff race. Every week, it starts to be like one more team as we start to run out of games. Number 15. They got ahead of the White Sox in my books now. 0-3 against Houston. So they started the week and it's just like disaster. Minnesota's been free-falling for a while. Division given up. The Guardians were trying to walk away with it, so they got swept by Astros. But then they did walk into San Francisco with a sweep of their own. And they're right back in it. This Central Division is just wide open. And at this point, I would give them a little bit of an edge over the White Sox. It's going to come down to how these teams play against each other. One of these teams, they have to go hot if they're going to catch the Guardians, and if the Guardians cool off, that's their way into the playoffs. At Wildcard, I don't see it for these 2 teams. Division is what I see. Number 14, we got the Toronto Blue Jays, 3-0 against Boston, so started the week off strong. I was like, all right, my Jays, they're finally doing it. Come on, boys. But then the Angels come into town. They're celebrating the 30 years since they won the World Series, this big ceremony, and they just get clobbered all 3 games. Didn't put up any runs the first 2 games, and then they lost. They have a big week coming up. You got to watch out for them. They're playing the Cubs and the Pirates. So the Jays have this week where they need 5 wins. If they're going to really show me that they're going to be a playoff team, because right now I'm 14. In my opinion, even though they're sitting in a wild card spot, 14 to me is a team missing the playoffs. So they're playing the Cubs, they're playing the Pirates. These are teams they have to win in this tight playoff race. You can't, if you go 500 this week, Jays, I'm sorry, you're done. Number 13, San Diego Padres. 0-2 against Cleveland, 2-1 against Kansas City. Saturday night was interesting. Kansas City had a little bit of a lead. I was watching this game kind of closely because I've been monitoring San Diego, because sometimes I feel like I'm a little too hard on them, but it's hard not to be. They luckily came back last night. Kansas City did take one today, and they only got 2 of the 3 against San Diego, against the Royals, and they lost to the Guardians, so it's kind of like an AL Central road trip kind of thing. But it didn't work out. They're still slowly they're holding on to that last playoff spot right now, ahead of the Brewers. But in terms of power rankings, I do give the edge to the Brewers, number 12. 1-2 against the Dodgers, so they played pretty good against the Dodgers. I gotta give them that. And then they beat the Cubs this weekend 2-1. As a Brewers fan, of course, you would love to see them sweep the Cubs, a weaker team, and get in this tight race with the Padres they're in. The edge I'm giving it right now, and it's strictly this, is that I feel like the Brewers are expected to have a weaker schedule down the stretch. The Padres are going to have the Dodgers. The Padres are going to have the Giants and the Diamondbacks, whereas at least Milwaukee's going to have the Pirates. They're going to have the Reds. They're going to have the Cubs. These division teams should be able to be the difference. They're only 1 game difference, so unless the Padres can play 650 down the stretch, I do give the edge right now to the Brewers. But of course, anything can happen. We got 6 weeks, 5 weeks left. Number 11, making a debut in the second row. Oh my God, I cannot believe I'm doing this. 2-1 against the White Sox, 2-1 against the Houston Astros. These Baltimore Orioles have the best record in the American League since the All-Star break. Just unbelievable. And I think if we start looking back at the last 3 months, they got to be one of the best teams too. So you got to give them a lot of credit for how far they've come. Their pitching was outstanding this weekend against the Astros. I think, was it 2? I know for sure it was 2 games in a row that their starters went to the 7th inning. Might have been 3 if you count the White Sox. I didn't look back that far, but it definitely was the best they've done this season. But yeah, they got shut down a little bit today, 3-1 loss to Astros, but Orioles fans, they got to be excited. They're right there in the thick of it, technically on the outside of a playoff race. But if you look at my predictions based off the power rankings, I do have them securing that last American League spot. Number 10. I think the same spot as last week. We've got the Cleveland Guardians. They went 2-0 against San Diego. And they got a little bit of a beat down against Seattle over the weekend, losing 3 of 4. But lucky for them, the rest of the teams in their division didn't do so hot. They had the Twins who went 500. They went basically 500, so they didn't fall. They didn't lose the gap anymore. We had the White Sox who went 1-5, so they got a little bit of a stretch on that. And I do think Guardians, when they match up against the Twins and the White Sox, they are the better club. So I do expect them to hold on to that division. They'll technically, if they win the division, they'll be the number 3 seed. I consider them right now the number 5 seed, but they do play Baltimore over this week. So I've got to be pretty excited for these 2 teams to play. They're basically playing for the 10 spot on the power rankings. That's what makes this so fun, is that even though these teams are out of it, if they play each other, it does technically have some implications for me. So I get pretty excited. Number 9. We got Tampa Bay Rays 4-0 against the Angels. So they started the week very hot, and I just was like, okay, they're doing exactly what I said a team needed to do, was get hot down the stretch, and they're doing it. They went 1-2 against Boston, so a little bit of a slowdown, but I'm not gonna hold it against them. Division rival, they at least took one. They salvaged getting swept. Got to be excited about that, and their pitching has been pretty outstanding. Out of all these teams so far that we've talked about, Tampa Bay is by far my favorite of those. Number 8, we got the Seattle Mariners. 1-1 against Washington, 3-1 against Cleveland. So yeah, technically I dropped them a spot. mainly because I feel like their chances of playoffs are a little bit weaker than number 7. But all the same, I still think they're making the playoffs. The drough's going to end. Don't worry, Mariners fans. Big series win over the weekend against the Guardians. It just, to me, showed how far this team has come, and they really are ready to make a playoff push. Mariners fans, you got to be excited. Number 7, Philadelphia Phillies 4-0 against Cincinnati, 2-1 against Pittsburgh. So they're doing exactly what I said the Jays need to do this week. They're beating up on the weaker teams, even though they're third in their division. Consider their division super stacked at this point. I really think with Harper coming back, the Phillies are in a prime spot to at least make the playoffs. I don't think that's a question at this point. If anything, to me, the National League only has one playoff up for grabs, and it's between Milwaukee and San Diego. Other than that, the National League's pretty much secure. Number 6, New York Yankees, 2-0 against the Mets, so they take the Subway Series this week. And 2-2 against Oakland. I already talked about it. The game wasn't over. It might be over now, but I can't see the score if it ended. If the Yankees came back and won, technically they went 3-1. It's not going to change the way I see this board right now. The Yankees had that cold streak. They're trying to turn it around this week. They had a winning week, but it wasn't super great. They won against the Mets, so that was huge, a big turnaround, and they kind of had that 3-game winning streak going. But Yankees, when it comes up to these other teams, they seem to still have trouble against some solid pitching, even though they beat the Mets, of course. Beat the pitching there. I need to see a little bit more consistency. It's going to be, they're not far back from starting to climb back up this thing, that's for sure. Number 5, St. Louis Cardinals, 3-2 against the Cubs, 1-1 against Atlanta. So this is the Sunday night game, and normally I talk about this off the top. I do this filming before the Sunday night game, so that it pretty much comes out during the Sunday night game. So however that ends, could technically change the power rankings a little kind of bit, but I'm going to assume not. Cardinals luckily came back yesterday. The Braves were pretty much winning that game until the 9th, and Cardinals lucky to squeak that one out. Let's just say that. But they did pull up a win, and every win counts, so they're sticking in number 5. I got to be pretty excited with the Cardinals. They're solid, and I expect them to walk away with that division now at this point. That leaves us to number 4. We got the Houston Astros, 3-0 against Minnesota, 1-2 against Baltimore. This was a little bit tough, I'm not going to lie, but I dropped them a couple of spots, and it's mainly because they haven't had that strong win streak. And the fact that Baltimore kind of went in there and shut them down, even though they run over the Central, most teams should be running over the Central in the most part. They do have a little bit of a lead on their division, of course, but I think it's a little bit tighter than it's ever been, with the Mariners making a little bit of purge. I think at this rate, it's obvious the Astros are going to walk away with the division. They're going to walk away with that first-round bye. I don't think any of that's really in jeopardy. Just think when I'm starting to look at teams who they're going to play in the World Series, I tend to lean National League a lot, and that's pretty much the story of it. I know we have a bunch of Houston Astros fans that watch this. They're not going to agree with this at all, but we'll wait and see. I'm a little bit concerned with how their offense has been. I'm not going to lie. Number 3, we got the New York Mets. So they started 0-2 against the Yankees. Wanted to see how they would rebound after last week. I dropped them to 4th. They had that tough series against the Braves. They rebounded against the Yankees. Not well, but after that, I saw them play Colorado very well this weekend, winning 3 of 4, and they lost today 1-0. So technically, they could have had that 4-game sweep, but their offense just couldn't get going. Against the Rockies, winning 3, maybe I'm a little exaggerating. Maybe you can swap these two around. Really doesn't matter at this point, because it doesn't matter really for the Mets. They're gonna technically get a bye, so maybe they should be here. Maybe I got a little too harassed for lowering the Mets too much last week, but I think that pitching is really going to play an impact. But it doesn't change the fact of the matter that I have the Braves at number 2, 3-0 against Pittsburgh again, 1-1 against St. Louis. Talked about that already, but they're just hammered. Their offense went to town on Pittsburgh this weekend, or early this week, and I just like how hot this Braves team is. They're full of confidence. They're ex-World Series champs, guys, and it's going to be hard for the Mets to hold them off. I do predict at this point in the season that the Braves are going to make it up and catch those Mets, and then we're talking about something totally different. Number 1, There's no question about it. LA Dodgers remaining number one on the board, and I think it's going to be hard for any team to really catch them down the stretch. I saw today that over the last 50 games, the Dodgers were 41-9. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 41-9. It might have been 43-7, but for 43-7, that sounds pretty insane. But I feel like it's one of those. Either way, both of those are very much insane. Dodgers are favorites, but it's going to be awesome. Like, this just goes, the Dodgers are favorites, but the National League is stacked. You have 4 of the top 5 teams all coming from the National League in my books. There you guys have it. Let me know what you guys think. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. I do look at the stats, and I notice 80% of you guys that watch this do not subscribe. So please smash that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs. Hopefully by the end of the year, because we continue going on. We talk football, probably have some hockey in here. Not so much basketball, if that's your thing. Maybe you can take a time off, but subscribe anyway. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys out there for that next video.